They say wisdom is a gift, but they are wrong. Wisdom is a receipt for all the pain you already paid for. I spent 40 years building this sanctuary, only to realize I was building a cage. This letter? It's an opportunity I was too smart to take, too careful to risk. Now, the fire is the only thing that speaks back. Don't trade your life for safety. My name is the Storyteller. I have paid the price of experience, so you don't have to. Schopenhauer called it the hedgehog's dilemma. In the winter, hedgehogs crowd together to stay warm, but when they get too close, their quills prick each other. The pain forces them apart. Of human intimacy. To be loved is to be vulnerable to pain. I spent 40 years choosing safety. I pushed people away to protect my peace. I thought I was being strong. I thought I was being wise, but I forgot the second half of the rule. If you stay too far away to avoid the prick, you will freeze to death in the silence. Look at your childhood photos. That child is dead. You killed him. You are just the ghost that inherited the name. If you replace every plank on a ship over time, is it still the same ship? If your cells regenerate every 7 years, are you still you? Every cell in your body has been replaced. Every thought has changed. Every memory has been rewritten. Every experience has reshaped you. So who are you? The person you were. The person you are. The person you're becoming. The ship of Theseus. The paradox of identity. You are not the same person you were. But you are not a different person either. You are both and neither. You are the ship, and you are the planks, and you are the question itself. I stayed quiet in meetings for 30 years. I stayed quiet because I was afraid. Afraid they would judge me. Afraid they would see my mistakes. I thought everyone was watching. Every word, every gesture, every mistake. I thought I was the center of their attention. I thought I was under a spotlight, but I realized too late. They weren't thinking about me at all. They were thinking about themselves, their own mistakes, their own fears, their own spotlight. The spotlight effect. You think everyone is watching you, but they're not. They're watching themselves. Everyone is the star of their own movie, and you're just an extra in the background. My name is the Storyteller. I wasted 30 years in the shadows, afraid of a spotlight that was never on me. Don't make my mistake. You are not living yet. You are rehearsing. You think you have time. You think tomorrow is when you'll start. Next week. Next year. I thought I had time too. I thought the clock would wait. I thought someday would come. I thought I was preparing for life. But I was just waiting. Confucius said, "We have 2 lives, and the second begins when we realize we only have one." The first life is the rehearsal, the preparation, the waiting, the someday. The second life begins when you realize you only have one, when you realize someday might not come, when you realize you're not waiting for life to start, you're already in it. Don't wait for the second life to begin. Start it now. A donkey stands between 2 identical piles of hay. Unable to choose which is better, it starves to death. The donkey didn't die because he had no food. He died because he had too many choices. You stand between 2 doors, 2 paths, 2 choices, paralyzed by the fear of choosing wrong. You analyze, you compare, you weigh the options. You think, if I just think harder, I'll find the perfect choice. But the perfect choice doesn't exist. And while you're thinking, you're standing still. The paradox of choice. More options don't mean more freedom. They mean more paralysis. The wrong choice is better than no choice. The wrong path is better than standing still. Stop analyzing. Pick one. Move. You are holding onto a rope that is cutting your hands to pieces just because you've been holding it for 10 years. Your knuckles are white. Your hands are bleeding. The rope is digging into your skin. It's red and raw. You see strands snapping, but you keep holding because you've held it for so long, because you've invested so much time. You pull with all your might. You strain, you struggle, and you look down, and you're pulling nothing, just a pile of rocks. Useless, dead weight. But you keep pulling because you've already pulled for so long. The time you spent is gone. It is a ghost. It does not care about your loyalty. The only question that matters is, if you started today, knowing what you know now, would you pick up that rope? If the answer is no, let it go. The fall will hurt less than the holding on. You think the next thing will make you happy. The promotion, the house, the person. You chase it like it's the answer. And for a moment, you have it. The rush. The feeling that finally you've arrived. You think, this is it. This is what I needed. But then, the feeling fades. It always fades. You're back where you started. The same emptiness, the same hunger. The thing you wanted sits there and you realize it was never about the thing. So you look for the next thing, and the next, and the next, running on a treadmill that goes nowhere, chasing a horizon that moves away as you approach it. The hedonic treadmill. You're running, but you're standing still. My name is the Storyteller. I ran that treadmill for 40 years. The only way to get off is to stop running. A tolerant society must be open. It must welcome all ideas, all people, all perspectives. The door stays open. But what happens when someone comes through that door, whose only goal is to close it forever, to destroy the very tolerance that let them in? Do you tolerate the intolerant? If you do, they will destroy tolerance. If you don't, you become intolerant yourself. The paradox has no answer, only a choice. I learned this the hard way. Sometimes, to protect the open door, you must close it. Sometimes tolerance requires intolerance. The paradox of tolerance. The less you know, the more certain you are. You stand at the peak of confidence, shouting your truth to the world. But then, you learn something. Just one thing. And suddenly you realize you don't know what you thought you knew. The peak crumbles. You fall into the valley. You see the mountain of knowledge stretching above you, and you realize how small you are, how little you know. The confidence is gone, replaced by the weight of ignorance. But if you keep climbing, if you keep learning, you reach a different peak. Not the peak of confidence, the peak of knowing how much you don't know. That's true wisdom. In the moment before you're watched, you are who you truly are. Natural, authentic, real. But the moment someone observes you, you change. You become aware. You adjust. You perform. The observation itself alters what you're observing. You can never know the unobserved truth. Once you look, it changes. Once you measure, it shifts. The act of observation creates the reality you see. I spent years trying to see the truth of things. But I learned the truth exists only in the moment before you look. The observer effect. You can never know what you would have been if no one was watching. You see it in your mind. Perfect. Flawless. Exactly as it should be. You know you can make it perfect. But then you start, and you see it. The first imperfection. The first flaw. And you think, I can fix this. I must fix this. So you fix it. And you see another flaw. And another. You revise. You perfect. You polish. But there's always one more thing. One more flaw. Nothing is ever good enough. So nothing is ever finished. I learned this too late. Perfection is the enemy of completion. The enemy of progress. The enemy of life itself. Done is better than perfect. Good enough is enough. You look in the mirror and you see yourself. Your achievements. Your identity. Your story. You are attached to what you see. The ego needs that reflection. It needs to see itself, to be recognized, to be validated. It builds its identity around the image in the mirror. But then something happens. The mirror cracks. The reflection shatters. The image you were attached to breaks, and you realize you were never the reflection. You were the one looking. The ego-trapped body. You thought you were the image, but the image was just a story you told yourself. When it shatters, you're finally free. Free to be who you are, not who you think you should be. The comfort zone. It's warm. It's safe. It's familiar. You know what to expect. You feel secure. But outside, there's growth, there's possibility, there's life. But it's unknown, it's risky, it's uncomfortable. So you stay in the comfort zone. And for a while, it feels good. But then, the comfort becomes the prison. The safety becomes the stagnation. The familiar becomes the trap. The comfort zone paradox. You can't grow and stay comfortable. You can't evolve and stay safe. Comfort and growth cannot coexist. The choice is yours, comfort or growth. You cannot have both. You learn, you study, you know. The circle of your knowledge grows. You feel wise, you feel certain. But as the circle of knowledge expands, so does the circle of what you know you don't know. The more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. The paradox of knowledge. The more you know you don't know. Knowledge doesn't shrink ignorance, it reveals it. It illuminates the vast darkness of what remains unknown. I thought knowledge would make me wise, but true wisdom isn't knowing everything. It's knowing that you don't know. The more you learn, the more humble you become. That's the paradox. You control it. You think, if I just hold on tighter, I can control it, I can make it mine. But it slips. It always slips. The tighter you grip, the more it escapes. The more you try to control, the more it controls you. So you let go. You release. You open your hands. And in that moment, you realize the paradox of control. The more you try to control, the less control you have. The less you try to control, the more control you gain. I spent years gripping, holding, controlling. But true control isn't holding on. It's letting go. It's accepting what you cannot control. That's when you're truly free. That's when you're truly in control. You chase success. You work. You strive. You achieve. You think, when I get there, I'll be happy. I'll be complete. And you get there. You achieve it. The success is yours. But then, you realize, the feeling you expected isn't there. The completion you thought you'd feel is missing. The paradox of success. You spent years chasing it, thinking it would fill the void. But success doesn't fill the void. It just makes the void more visible. The achievement is empty without the journey. I learned this too late. Success isn't the destination. It's the journey, the pursuit, the growth. The destination is just empty. The paradox of success. When you're young, time moves slowly. A day feels like a week. A year feels like forever. You think you have all the time in the world. But then something happens. Time starts to speed up. Days become weeks. Weeks become months. Months become years. Before you know it, a decade has passed. The paradox of time. The older you get, the faster it moves. A year when you're 10 feels like forever. A year when you're 60 feels like a month. Time doesn't change. You do. I learned this too late. Time is relative. When you're young, each day is a larger fraction of your life. When you're old, each day is a smaller fraction. That's why it feels faster. Make each day count. You remember it clearly. That moment, that day, that feeling. It's vivid. It's real. It's exactly as it happened. But is it? Each time you remember, you change it. You add details. You remove details. You reshape it. The memory becomes less accurate, but more meaningful. The paradox of memory. Every time you remember something, you're not playing back a recording. You're reconstructing it. And each reconstruction changes the memory. The more you remember, the less accurate it becomes. I learned this too late. Memory is not truth. It's story. It's the story you tell yourself about what happened. And stories change. That's the paradox. The memory you hold so dear might not be what actually happened. You want to be free. Free from rules. Free from responsibility. Free from constraints. You think freedom is the absence of limits. But then you realize the chains you feel aren't from outside. They're from inside. They're the choices you made. The responsibilities you accepted. The commitments you made. The paradox of freedom. True freedom isn't the absence of constraints. It's the acceptance of responsibility. The more you try to be free from everything,
the more you become a slave to nothing. I learned this too late. Freedom without responsibility is chaos. Responsibility without freedom is prison. True freedom is choosing your constraints. It's accepting the chains you choose to wear. You want to be free. Free from rules. Free from responsibility. Free from constraints. You think freedom is the absence of limits. But then you realize the chains you feel aren't from outside. They're from inside. They're the choices you made. The responsibilities you accepted. The commitments you made. The paradox of freedom. True freedom isn't the absence of constraints. It's the acceptance of responsibility. The more you try to be free from everything, the more you become a slave to nothing. I learned this too late. Freedom without responsibility is chaos. Responsibility without freedom is prison. True freedom is choosing your constraints. It's accepting the chains you choose to wear. You're certain. You know. You have no doubt. You have the answer. You're sure of it. But then, a question, a doubt, a possibility, and suddenly, you're not so certain anymore. The certainty crumbles. The paradox of certainty. The more certain you are, the more you close yourself off to truth. The more you doubt, the more you open yourself to possibility. Certainty is the enemy of learning. I learned this too late. True wisdom isn't being certain. It's being comfortable with uncertainty. It's holding your beliefs lightly. It's being ready to change your mind when new evidence appears. You're certain. You know. You have no doubt. You have the answer. You're sure of it. But then, a question, a doubt, a possibility, and suddenly, you're not so certain anymore. The certainty crumbles. The paradox of certainty. The more certain you are, the more you close yourself off to truth. The more you doubt, the more you open yourself to possibility. Certainty is the enemy of learning. I learned this too late. True wisdom isn't being certain. It's being comfortable with uncertainty. It's holding your beliefs lightly. It's being ready to change your mind when new evidence appears. You give advice. You share your wisdom. You tell them what to do. You think, I've been through this. I know what's best. But they don't listen. They ignore it. They do it their way. And you think, why won't they listen? I'm trying to help. The paradox of advice. The advice you give is based on your experience. But they need their own experience. They can't learn from your mistakes. They need to make their own. I learned this too late. Advice is useless until it's needed. And by the time it's needed, it's too late. The best advice is the advice they discover themselves. The wisdom they earn. You gain experience. You learn. You grow. You think, experience makes me wise. The more I experience, the wiser I become. But then you realize, experience can also trap you. It can make you rigid. It can make you think you know everything. It can close your mind. The paradox of experience. Experience teaches you what works, but it also teaches you what doesn't work. And sometimes, what didn't work before might work now. Experience can blind you to new possibilities. I learned this too late. Experience is valuable, but it's not everything. The wisdom isn't in the experience itself. It's in knowing when to let go of old experiences and embrace new ones. You grow. You improve. You become better. You think, growth is always good. More growth means more success. But then you realize, growth has a cost. You lose things. You change. The person you were is gone. Growth requires letting go. The paradox of growth. To grow, you must let go of who you were. But who you were got you here. Growth is both gain and loss. You can't grow without losing something. I learned this too late. Growth isn't just addition. It's also subtraction. You must let go to grow. You must lose to gain. That's the paradox. Growth requires loss. You search for authenticity. You want to be real. You want to be yourself. You think, I need to find my true self. But then you realize, you're always performing. Even when you're trying to be authentic, you're performing authenticity. The search itself is a performance. The paradox of authenticity. The more you try to be authentic, the more you perform. The more you search for your true self, the more you create a self to search for. Authenticity becomes another mask. I learned this too late. There is no true self to find. There is only the self you create. Authenticity isn't finding who you are. It's accepting who you're becoming. You need connection. You need people. You need to belong. You think, connection will make me whole. But then you realize, even in connection, you're alone. Even surrounded by people, you're isolated. Connection doesn't eliminate loneliness. It just makes it more visible. The paradox of connection. The more connected you are, the more you realize how alone you are. The more people you know, the more you realize no one truly knows you. Connection reveals isolation. I learned this too late. Connection doesn't eliminate loneliness. It transforms it. True connection isn't about being known. It's about being seen. And being seen means being alone together. You fear solitude. You avoid being alone. You think, solitude is loneliness. Being alone is being lonely. But then you try it. You sit with yourself. You face the silence. And you discover solitude isn't loneliness. It's something else entirely. The paradox of solitude. The more you avoid being alone, the more alone you feel. The more you embrace solitude, the less alone you become. Solitude isn't the absence of connection. It's the presence of yourself. I learned this too late. Solitude isn't loneliness. Loneliness is the absence of others. Solitude is the presence of yourself. In solitude, you find the one person you can never escape, yourself. You want to leave a legacy. You want to be remembered. You think, I need to make my mark. I need to be remembered. But then you realize, most people are forgotten. Most legacies fade. Even the greatest are eventually forgotten. Time erases everything. The paradox of legacy. The more you try to be remembered, the more you're forgotten. The more you chase legacy, the less you live. Legacy is built in the present, but measured in the future you'll never see. I learned this too late. Legacy isn't about being remembered. It's about how you live now. The legacy that matters isn't what people remember. It's how you affected them while you were here. You pursue wisdom. You study. You learn. You think, wisdom will make me better. Wisdom will solve everything. But then you realize, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. The wiser you become, the more you see your ignorance. Wisdom reveals your foolishness. The paradox of wisdom. The pursuit of wisdom makes you aware of your lack of wisdom. The more you know you don't know. True wisdom is knowing how little you know. I learned this too late. Wisdom isn't having all the answers. It's knowing you don't have them. And it's being comfortable with not knowing. The wisest person knows they're a fool. I've spent 30 days telling you about paradoxes, about the contradictions of life, about the truths that seem false, and the falsehoods that seem true. But here's the final paradox, the one that contains all the others. The paradox of paradoxes itself. Every paradox I've told you is both true and false. Every contradiction contains its own resolution. Every truth is incomplete without its opposite. The final paradox. Life itself is a paradox. To understand it, you must accept that you'll never fully understand it. To find the answer, you must accept there is no answer. That's the final paradox. And it's the only truth. My name is the Storyteller. I have paid the price of experience, so you don't have to. But remember, the final paradox is that there is no final answer, only the journey.